Low-key, I honestly think my mother enjoyed lecturing me to death because she'd find every waking excuse to nag. Like it was either, Dika, why don't you do this? Or Dika, why don't you do that? Or Dika, seriously. Eventually, at some point, everything she said became noise, and it was literally one ear in and one ear out. I remember in the second grade, a day before school started, my mother lectured me for an hour straight about the importance of remembering and pronouncing someone's names correctly. At the time, I had trouble pronouncing my second grade teacher's name, Miss Cassandra Day. I said, Miss Cassandra Day. So, throughout my life, I pronounced people's names wrong left and right. I couldn't care less. Later in life, I had a grade 10 teacher pronounce my name as Pradika. I looked around. Yeah, I was the laughingstock. And no matter how many times I corrected this man, he refused to get my name right. He kept saying Pradika. Thanks, man. And I finally knew what it felt like. From that experience alone, I finally understood what my mother tried to teach me. Honoring someone's name is the utmost respect you can bestow to someone, and that's something I carry with me till today. But it's a real shame I didn't listen to her back then. In the constant cacophony of our modern day-to-day lives, I wonder if listening should be our priority. Welcome back to the show, an intimate conversation surrounding personal growth and the experiences that shape us into the people we are today. I am your host, Pradika, and this is The Pradikament. Today on the show, we have our guest, the host of Love in Public podcast, the amazing Abril Soewarso Rivera.
Wow, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here, Pradika.
I'm excited for you to be here. I'm super excited to have someone experienced like you in the podcasting world to be on my pod, to this little pod.
And I have to say that monologue really resonated with me because I've been saying my last name wrong my whole life.
Really?
Yeah.
How is it pronounced? Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you're Indonesian.
No, that's absolutely
so
fair.
I have an Indonesian last name and a
Okay.
Mexican last name.
All right,
The
dope.
Mexican last name, I speak Spanish. I've been
Right.
saying it right my whole life.
Okay, dope.
And my Indonesian last name is Soewarso.
Soewarso.
Yeah, but I have been saying it Soewarso because that's how you'd pronounce it in Spanish.
Oh.
And I once misspelt it on one of my passports.
Really? So is it like, is that done? Is it pronounced wrong this entire, like on your passport?
On my passport, I spelled it without the E.
Oh.
Yeah.
Damn, nah, it's okay. Don't worry. You can change it later on,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You can change it later on. So we've had a previous conversation. I gave you a call right before this podcast, and I discovered that you used to live in California and Saudi Arabia, and I would just love to ask you about like how has these environments shaped you? Like how has you living there shaped you to be the person you are today?
Oh, I had a friend tell me the other day that she had a coastal childhood, and I feel like I very much had that.
Okay.
I was born in California in the
Sweet.
Bay Area,
Okay.
and I lived there
Let's go.
until I was 8. Yeah. And then when I was 8 years old, my mom moved my brother and me
Okay.
across the Atlantic to a small town on the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, just 1 hour north
Wow.
of Jeddah. And they were building the very first co-ed university in Saudi. So this would be the very first time that there would be post-high school education in Saudi where men and women would be studying together.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was also more than 10 years ago, 2009, when women weren't allowed to drive, I feel like there was a lot of stigma with my mom moving through spaces as a single woman, as a single parent. Yeah, but I don't regret anything. I loved growing up on the Red Sea. I feel like people here in Canada and the States grow up with the mile run at the start of their PE classes. And in Saudi, it's water sports. It's snorkeling and kayaking and
fire.
getting your scuba diving certification.
Yeah.
And I remember during my exam period, my friends would all hunker down and lock themselves up in their room to study for our IB exams. And
IB too. Hey, let's go. That was a struggle, my friend. That was a struggle.
and I would get on my moped after I was done studying and head down to the beach. And that's something that I think you don't get in every big city, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So you literally, it was just water sports. Damn, that's so dope.
Yeah.
What was the most shocking thing about living from, so you lived in California. So tell me the timeline. So where did you start off with and where did you end up with?
Yeah, I started in California and then I moved to Saudi when I was 8 years old in 2009.
And then you lived there throughout most of your life.
Yeah, and then I lived there for 10 years until I came to BC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from one West Coast to another.
Yeah, no, that sounds so dope. And so, what are the most interesting things from California and from Saudi Arabia? What would you say is the most interesting thing from the two?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think in Saudi, my favorite thing about the culture and the people is just how warm and hospitable everyone is.
Oh, okay.
It's similar to Indonesia, where if
Yeah.
you come into somebody's home and they offer you a cup of tea, something to
Okay.
eat, it's an insult when you don't say yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I also think that Arabic is such a beautiful language. I wish that I learned more when I was there, but one of my best friends is Saudi, and
Okay.
she's been teaching me a little bit. I'm going to butcher it, but something that I've been thinking about constantly is this one phrase that people say to each other when they meet an old friend, and it's Benoda Aliyom, and then the response would be Benodik. And it literally translates to, wow, you're glowing, you lit up the room when you walked in today. And the response is, no, this is your glow.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I see a lot of similarities with Mexican culture, which for me feels like my own home culture. And that's definitely something that you see all across the States and definitely in California,
Right.
where it's that open arms, come as you are kind of love and hospitality.
I see. That's really interesting. Yeah, I would never thought that Saudi Arabia, because I have friends who live in Saudi Arabia and
Yeah.
they tell me like all these different things, but like what you're telling me, it's kind of like living in paradise. It kind of feels like Bali for some reason, right? Like what you're describing to me.
Yeah. But I also, and a lot of expat kids who have lived in the Middle East will tell you, I lived in a bubble where our experiences will reflect what it's like to live in a gated compound, and
Right.
maybe not Riyadh or Jeddah.
Yeah.
So take what I say with a grain of salt, but I am really grateful for getting to grow up there.
No, I mean, I would too. I mean, I used to live in Singapore a lot, and
Yeah.
that was also an opportunity in itself that was presented to me because of my family's work, right? So, and I wouldn't be. It's so funny that you say that you're Indonesian, because I'm also Indonesian too, but I'm not really so connected with my culture as much as I hoped to be.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in Singapore I think I moved when I was 5. I moved to Singapore when I was 5, and I lived there my whole life. And the language that I spoke literally was the language that the country spoke, which was English. And I remember, maybe this was just me being dumb as a kid, but I could, for the life of me, I went to a speech therapist, and they said, do not mix Bahasa and English because this kid cannot understand or distinguish between the both.
Oh.
So it's either he learns how to grow up speaking English or grow up learning how to speak Bahasa. And then
Yeah.
my mom, my dad said, okay, he's going to speak like English. And so like I'm so disconnected from my heritage.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way too as a third culture kid?
Oh, that. I'm just still thinking about that story with the speech therapist, because I feel like a speech therapist can come into a child's life and either mark them in a really good way or a really
Right.
bad way. And your
Yeah.
parents were hit with such a hard decision of,
Yeah.
are we going to continue to teach our son his mother tongue, or will he only speak English proficiently? That's a hard decision to make
It
when
is,
you were so
right?
young. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of being a third culture kid, 100%. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm walking in most spaces thinking, okay, I'm not Mexican enough, Indonesian enough, American enough.
yeah.
And the more that you have to split up your identity and call more cultures home, the less allegiance you feel towards each of those. Like, I call myself the least patriotic person I know. And if I could
Same.
live in a world without borders, maybe I would. I know that's a hot take.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say this in one of my classes recently. We were talking about what home means, and she said, yeah, for me, home is the people that I want to call on a really bad day and the people I want to call when I have a really good day.
Okay.
And it's interesting that when you were so young, you had a hard time switching between Bahasa and English,
Right.
because that is something that we tell third culture kids that they're good at, that's one of their gifts and talents,
Yes.
that you can code switch easily and
Yep.
you can adapt. And I think if sometimes it's something that we take for granted, that it isn't always that easy.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
not. I just wish, because I feel super talented. Can you speak multiple languages?
I just speak English and Spanish.
Just English and Spanish. See, for me, like my entire family can speak a multitude of different languages. My mom, let's look at my grandmother from my mom's side. She can speak Dutch, Bahasa.
Japanese?
No, Chinese
Oh,
actually.
okay.
A bit. No, actually, no. Sorry. Let me go back. My grandmother's actually ethnically Chinese,
Yeah.
but she was adopted by a Dutch family.
Oh.
So I have a bit of Dutch family, so she can speak English, Dutch, Bahasa, and those three. She's trilingual, and I can't. And my grandfather the same thing as well, and I can't speak a word. I feel, you know what? Have you ever heard of this term, bule? Have you heard of bule? No. So basically, whenever I speak Bahasa, I would speak in such a white accent, and it hurts because when you want to try and relate to people who are from your culture, they're like, hey man, you're a bit arrogant for just speaking because whenever I would speak to them, I would speak English, and they would be like, oh, like,
have you forgotten where you come from?
yeah, and I get that all the time, and it's not like I don't want to, because when I do speak Bahasa to them, they're like, you sound white as fuck, like literally. So it's like it's this like tough line. Do you experience that yourself too? Like, do you have that or no?
Ooh, definitely. There are a lot of phrases in Spanish that I didn't grow up with.
Yeah.
For example, I remember when I first got to UBC, I learned how to say flirt in Spanish, and that just when I was a kid.
What is it?
Coquetear.
Coquetear.
Yeah, and you don't learn that as a kid.
Okay.
I remember not even knowing what the word was for mean when I was 7 years old. I was like, how do you say mean in Spanish? And I was part of this WhatsApp group chat with a whole bunch of Latinos here at UBC, and they'd be using all of this slang, and none of it was landing for me.
Yeah.
And I had to ask another friend of mine, what are they saying? What are they talking about?
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard because if you move away from the motherland, of course you're going to have your Bahasa is going to be accented. Of course, it's going to sound clumsy sometimes, but that shouldn't take away from the attempt of, hey, I'm trying to communicate with you. I'm trying to reconnect.
Right. Yeah. So that's something that I struggle with, and it's great that, it's great to know that I'm not alone in this.
Definitely not.
I'm not alone in this. Here's a question for you. So you, would you say that your background and where you've lived has made you a more empathetic person because you can see different perspectives and different views?
Ooh.
Because you're engrossed in so much culture, a rich abundance of culture, right? Would you say that you're a more empathetic person because of that?
And I should clarify that my mom is Mexican, my dad was Indonesian.
Yeah. And you lived also abroad
Yeah.
from place to place?
I would like to think that our modus operandi, that our default as humans is empathy.
Okay.
When you look at little kids and how early on they're able to share, earlier than a year, children are able to offer personal toys and offer comfort to another.
Right.
That makes me think that we have that ability built in. And I'm not sure if it is that way.
Okay.
And if there are things that we can do to condition people to be more empathetic. But I don't know if I would say that it's my upbringing that made me that way, or like specifically geographically where I've been, or how my mother has raised me, or if it is something that every child has.
Right.
I wonder, what do you think?
See, I think so. I genuinely think so, because I feel like, just for me personally, just being around different people, you can see where they're coming from. And that's what empathy really is about, right? You don't have to necessarily agree with what they're coming from, but you can understand where they're coming from. And to me, having lived in Singapore, going to an international school, I see things from different points of view, different cultures, how they speak, how they approach. So that's why, like, when I meet new people, I can sort of fit in certain personas, like, or show off certain personas just to understand where they're coming from, right?
See, that's code switching at work. Not necessarily from the bilingual point of view, but it's you presenting a different version of Pradika to fit the situation, to fit the environment, to fit the dynamic.
Right.
And something I will agree with you on is empathy and third culture kids. It's the fact that you are used to seeing people who are differently situated, and you will always notice. You will be acutely aware of when you see difference and when you see that someone's being excluded, because you've been in that situation.
Yes,
you've been the odd one out.
Yeah. I can agree with you with that. Yeah, for sure. I can agree with you with that. And the reason why I asked you that is because, your podcast, Love in Public podcast, is really around like having these really great, intimate conversations and exposing different perspectives. I was wondering, why did you start it? Tell me about it. Yeah.
Love in Public. It comes from this quote by Cornel West that justice is just what love looks like in public.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've spoken about
this before, yeah.
When I first heard that quote, I remember something about it feeling, shiny and new.
Yeah.
And like the words were strung together just right. And I was thinking a lot about the conversations I was having in day-to-day life and how a lot of them weren't serving me, and how I wasn't being the best listener, how I wasn't practicing mindfulness or reverence for the conversations that I was having with other people. I was talking to them, but I wasn't hearing them.
Okay.
And I'd notice both in myself and in others just bad listening.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, how often do we interrupt people, cut people off, go on self-referential tangents, or we'll be practicing scripts in our heads before, instead of listening to someone else. How am I going to sound likable? How am I going to sound intelligent or charismatic or funny? Whatever it is, however we want to be perceived, instead of working hard to understand the person who's in front of us, who's sharing so much of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And going off of what you said about listening, you know, I was reading, you know, your description for Love in Public podcast and what it says, and I love this word that you use to describe your podcast as a podcast that advocates radical listening.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me, you know, your thoughts on radical listening, and just go why use that specific word to describe your pod?
Yeah, I love language, and I love how words can mean, we can be really intentional with the words that we use.
Right.
And I like the word radical. I think sometimes it does get tossed around a little bit.
Yeah.
But for me, radical is going back to the root. And what do we want to teach our kids? What do we want when we first teach people how to listen? What is involved in that?
Okay.
And it is not being distracted. It's being with the person that you're with. It is holding space for whatever they're going through. It's that idea of open arms, I'll take you as you are.
Okay.
And it's funny because that's not that difficult. And just the same way that it's not that difficult to be helpful or kind in a situation with a stranger, and yet we are so busy all the time and there's so much going on. We're just cerebral, and our minds are elsewhere, that we're not able to do the simple act of listening a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's wild, right? Because we live in an age of communication where we're constantly conversing with each other, right? We're constantly communicating, but not so much listening. So here's a question for you. You know, how do we practice listening? Honestly, how do we, you know, you say it's not difficult, right?
Yeah.
So then what do you think, or what should we do to practice listening, to get better at it?
Yeah. I think sometimes when we talk about building community or social justice, it can feel intimidating because it feels as if we're pointing a finger towards ourselves and that there's something wrong with us. When in fact, I think we should shift away from that.
Right.
And it's more about, what can I do to be in service to others?
Right.
And I think a little piece of homework maybe for your listeners is, in my day-to-day life, what am I doing to be a bad listener? I have a terrible interruption habit, and I take responsibility for that.
Fair.
I interrupt people because I'm fascinated by what they have to say. Something about what you're saying excites me, and I want to talk about that more.
Right.
And I realize, sometimes it actually might make the other person feel like they're not heard, like they didn't get to finish their thought.
Yeah.
Other people might not think at the same pace as I do.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, okay, for today, for this week, maybe for the next hour, I'm going to try and listen. And every time I want to interrupt, I'm just going to take a deep breath and keep listening.
It's funny you say that because I do it all the fucking time. I kid you not. Like, you name any of the boys here know for a fact that I do oftentimes interrupt people when I have a thought in mind, because for me, it's like I'm afraid that if I don't say this now, I'm going to lose my thought. Right.
And it doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from genuine connection.
Right. Yeah.
Or another thing that is a habit, not of our generation, but everybody, is the self-reference. You'll be telling me a story and I'll say, oh man, like the same thing happened to me last week. Instead of, that's really tough. I'm really sorry that happened. Or I'm listening, I hear you. It's, well, let me make it about myself because I have things to share. And that also doesn't come from a place of bad intentions. It comes from, I had something similar happen to me. I want to connect with you in this way because now here's something that we share. But sometimes people don't want that. Sometimes people just want whatever they're going through for there to be space for that.
Right.
And it depends on the situation too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because like now looking back at like my childhood, right? I think, and I spoke about my mother a lot. She really emphasized on the idea of respecting someone. So I feel like for me, growing up, that was something that was always enforced, like religiously. And to be honest, I hated it as a kid. Like I just didn't, because my mom nags. I can't. I love my mom. I love you, mom. But she nags all the damn time, and I'm like, Jesus, just chill out, right? But I understood why she nagged. Like I really did, and what she was teaching me about respecting others. You know, it's funny how a lot of people don't respect other people. You know what I mean? It's weird. Yeah.
I wonder if for you, your idea of good listening and respect go together, and how whether or not they do.
It does go together, in my opinion. So, for example, let's say we're having this podcast right now. The fact that you came, like the fact that you spent time to come here, it is at least the least I can very much do is just listen. You know, listen to what you have to say because you spent time to come here. We converse messages. People are busy, right? You know, and I find that you know, just listening is like the bare minimum you can do when someone spends time for you, right? That's just my opinion on things, and that's how I was taught. So yeah, that's pretty much like yeah.
And when you're in Indonesia versus when you're here, do you find that there's a difference in how you relate to people? For example, I think it's a lot more common when you're here in North America to be in a situation where you'll notice that someone will monopolize the conversation a little bit. Like you're in a group setting and someone can't seem to let go of the mic. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just they're really excited about what they're talking about. Whereas in collectivistic societies like Indonesia or Mexico, Sri Lanka, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, there's much more of maybe reflexivity isn't the right word, but you having to defer to others. Right.
I think that's very prevalent, especially in Singapore, in my opinion. It is really prevalent in like Asian culture for some reason to like just, you know, like respect, not respect others, not necessarily, but just like give time to others. You know what I mean? It's always giving for some reason in Asian culture. And in Western culture, I find it's very like, I want to do well myself. Like that's what it is. There's nothing wrong between the two. I had a really interesting conversation with someone about this, that like you need, I had a conversation about you yesterday. You need a balance of both, right? About individualism and collectivism. You know what I mean? You have to have that balance between what you call, I can do stuff myself, but I also have to recognize that the stuff that I have done is because of other people and their help. And I think that goes hand in hand with listening, I feel.
Yeah. Oh, I love that last point that you said about my success doesn't occur in a vacuum. I am who I am because of the people who made the food that I ate, sewed the clothes that I wear today. For sure. We are an accumulation of all the people that came before us. And you are you because of generations of love and care that came before you.
Right. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And here's another thing. So, you know, I was reading this TED Talk, Arkin, this TED Talk. Not Arkin, I was watching it today, and he said something, this person, I forget, what's his name? His name is William Uri. Oh, I don't know if I pronounced
William.
His name. William said that, he said something about like active listening, and he said, what makes it so hard to listen is that there is so much going on our minds. There is so much noise and distractions that we don't have the mental and emotional space to be able to truly listen to the other side. So, a question to you is, how do we clear our... Do you agree with this statement?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And did you do your research for this?
I did. I actually took the time and effort, Arkin and Charlie, to actually do this stuff. Yeah. And for my viewers...
Research is a love language.
Yeah. I actually know what my love language is, too. To be honest.
We should talk about that.
Sure, let's talk about that. Okay, little side note. What is your love language, first of all? What is your love language?
My top love languages are words of affirmation and quality time.
For me, yeah, it's quality time, wink, wink, or words of affirmation. You know what I mean? I feel like quality time, physical touch is definitely up there. So the three triad for me, right, is like words of affirmation, quality time, and physical touch. On the thing, I actually have it here on my phone. Actually, I took a screenshot of this. Really, wait, we'll pull this up on the camera. Wait 1 second. I can show it to you right now. It's mad interesting. I didn't know this about myself.
Did you take the quiz online?
I took the quiz online. That's correct.
Because some people like to just self-diagnose themselves.
No. I genuinely took the quiz. Where is it? Oh, here. Look. It says right here. So this is my 5 languages. So I don't know if you can see that on camera. It's pretty bad, but this is it. Can you see it?
I can see it.
So, oh shit. All right, my bad. So it is 33% quality time, 30% physical touch, 27% words of affirmation, 10% What's the bell icon? I forget. It's
It's acts of service.
acts of service, and then 0% gifts. I don't really give a shit about gifts, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I see how like there's two on top, like quality time and physical touch. I feel like they both interlude. You know what I mean? I'm a very lovey. I like to hug people a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about you? So
it's words of affirmation, quality time tied, then
Tied.
physical touch,
okay.
then acts of service, and then meaningful gifts.
What do you find most interesting about those? Like what you've learned about your love language? Does it translate a lot or no?
I think acts of service has been climbing up on my list. And
Yeah.
I think it's because two of the people that are closest to me, my mom and my brother, that's their primary.
Really?
And for them, love is, let me take this off of your plate. Let me make the world a little bit more manageable for you by doing your laundry, making you a meal, running an errand for you, dropping you off somewhere.
Right.
And before, I'm not going to say it wasn't meaningless, but it didn't mean as much to me as someone praising me.
Right.
But, and I was having this conversation with my friend Tessa the other day.
Okay, shoot.
As you get older,
Yep.
so much of adulting is the never-ending list of things you have to do.
That's right.
And when someone can take something off of your to-do list, wow, that's meaningful.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. The way I see it is completely different. Though.
Okay, tell me.
I see it like, I feel like, I don't know. I just find that like those two up there, like for me, like you said, I just like having people around with me. You know what I mean? It's just like spending time with my friends, like, because to me, quality time is like you're taking a big part of your day just to spend it with me. Same thing
Right.
with like chores, I assume. I can see the logic, right?
Yeah. No, but quality time is you have 24, you don't even have 24 hours in a day. You have 12 hours in a day, and you've
max.
chosen to spend an hour with me. Wow.
Little old me, my love. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you find that your love languages match up with a lot of your friends, or that there's this discrepancy?
I think a lot of my friends, well, my two close friends here, Mickey and Kevin, shout out. I think their love languages, my love language with Kevin is the same. I think we're both like quality time.
Yeah.
And then Mickey, I think it's word of affirmation. I think he likes being praised. I think don't, from what I can see from him. So I think we all share similar love languages. Yeah.
And then there are certain things or acts
Yeah.
where you don't even know which category it falls under, like a curated playlist. Would that fall under meaningful gift or words of affirmation because the songs you choose have a certain meaning?
I mean, that's pretty deep.
Or what about planning a party for someone? Is that an act of service because you're taking that off their plate?
I think it would
or
be an
is
act
that
of
quality
service.
time because you're going to spend time at that party with them?
Oh damn, you're asking some hard hitting questions. I think it would be both. Hey, don't you think so?
Yeah.
I think it would be both. Like it's like, the first part of it is act of service because you did something initiatively, right? And then
Yeah.
the second part is quality time because I'm going to be there. Unless if you just have the party and just leave, that's not really what you're supposed to do, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, I have a question
Sure.
for you. A little bit unrelated.
Dope. Shoot.
Have you heard of the Irish exit?
No.
Okay, so it's when you're at a party and instead of saying bye to everyone at the party, you just leave. That's called an Irish exit.
What a baller move. Do you do that?
No, because I was raised
Right.
Mexican. If you're in Latin America, you say bye to everyone. You have to kiss them on both cheeks. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know.
I know.
So what is the equivalent? What's the Indonesian exit or the Singaporean exit?
It's the same thing. It's
Okay.
the same thing. I do it to all my mother's friends. Oh, bye. Tanta. Do you know the word tanta?
Yeah.
Bye, tanta. Bye, auntie. Every single time. It's like it's religious, and it's like it's pretty much how it is every single time I meet them. It's like before you go, bye. But here's a question for you. Going back to everything, we have all this clutter in our mind. How do we clear it? Honestly, what do you think to become better listeners?
Ooh, I think journaling is one of the answers, one of many answers. And who am I to prescribe what works for you, what doesn't work for you? For a lot of people,
And you've been journaling, right?
Yeah, I love journaling.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah, I used to actually run a journaling circle during the pandemic. I don't know if we're still, we're kind of still in the pandemic, but way back in 2020,
Okay.
when we were all feeling isolated.
Yeah.
I don't need to go back there.
Yeah.
I ran a little circle where we would do every week or two, we'd have a different theme.
Right.
And it was just a great space to connect. And what I liked so much about this circle is that we had women who I knew who were in my year of uni. And then we also had what I call wisdom women in their 50s and 60s, maybe not 60s, 40s and up, who were based out of Saudi Arabia or
that's
the
dope.
Netherlands. And because of virtual ways of gathering, we were able to have women who wouldn't normally interact. I think journaling is a really great way of having a record of everything that goes up here and having a way of tracking your inner monologue, because otherwise it's so easy to go into autopilot mode where you're not really thinking about what's going on. You're not really checking in with yourself, or it's like what we were talking about earlier when it comes to good listening, bad listening. How are you going to know what good listening or bad listening looks like if you're not even paying attention to it? Exactly. So journaling is a way to pay attention, to harvest details from your everyday, to think about how you interact with people. There's a really good self-reflection exercise that I recommend to everyone. It's called Nikon.
Okay. And tell me what does it do?
It comes from Japan, and it's a series of questions that you ask yourself either at the start of the day or at the end of the day, and you reflect on the last 24 hours. And you ask yourself, how have others been in service to me? How have I been in service to others? So it's how have others been helpful to me? What small acts have they done to help me? What small acts have I done to help them? And the last question is, how have I potentially been an inconvenience to others? Which is a hard question to sit with.
Have you been an inconvenience to someone recently?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I was telling you before we started, there's a fruit fly problem at my house, and it's because I keep buying peaches and nectarines and leaving them outside the fridge. So,
but you eat them though, honestly?
I do. Of course I eat them.
Okay.
It's peach season, baby.
It is. I do love it. I mean, I love this time of Vancouver because it's so beautiful, and I love wearing shorts. And I mean, you live in the Caribbean, the Red Sea, right? So it's like shorts everywhere, right? Every day. I love wearing shorts. I love it. I'm wearing shorts right now. I fucking love it. And it's just like, it reminds me a lot about Singapore. It's just like, it's chilling. It's hot. It's nice. I can wear t-shirts. I don't have to layer up. Wait, how did you find moving here to Canada? Like, it's fucking cold. Like,
it's cold, but it's nice to have different seasons because in Saudi there's nothing special about a clear day. There's nothing special about summer weather because every day is summer. And here it's nice. It's just a reminder of how dynamic and ever-changing we are to have the weather be different every day. But it was definitely something to get used to, having to wake up in the morning and check my weather app.
Yeah, I've never checked my weather app so many times today. Like this. I mean, since I moved here. I mean, when did you move here actually?
2019.
Oh, same time.
Yeah.
January.
August.
Wait, what year are you?
I'm entering my 4th year.
Okay, when were you born?
December 2000.
Oh shit. Okay, 2000 babies. Let's go. I think we're all 2000s here, right? Yeah, that's dope. That's freaking dope. Yeah. No, Year of the Dragon. Let's go.
I was gonna say Dragon Baby. Dragon Baby.
You know.
When I was a kid, my cousin told me that if you were to marry your sibling or your cousin and have a baby with them, a dragon would come out. And I remember for a split second thinking, wow, that's cool.
That is cool. Okay, here's a question for you. So you've done so many interviews on the Love in Public podcast. Yeah. What has been the highlight interviews that you've had? Like, what's the most things that, like, you're an interview that you've gotten like the most takeaways from?
Oh, I don't know if I'd be able to decide if I'd be able to pick one interview.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy the pilot of this season, which was an episode with my friend Violet Miles. Because we were able to spotlight a podcast that she'd created on our pod.
Oh, that's dope.
Which felt meta.
Really? That's so cool.
And it was an episode all about the intimacy of voicemails.
Okay. That's season 2, right?
It's what?
That's season 2, right?
Season 2, yeah.
That's dope.
And it got me and a lot of my friends thinking about voice notes, voicemails, and how nice it can feel, especially when your friends aren't here with you. Let's say you have a friend that's gone home for the summer, for them to send you a voice note and to hear their voice when they're not in the same city.
What is a matter that from your interviews that you've done, multitude of interviews, that you've recently gotten your attention, like recently that you focused on recently?
Okay. One that we released recently is called The Ghosts of Mothers I'll Never Know.
Okay.
And it was my friend who's actually Indonesian.
Oh, wow.
An essay that she wrote all about hating her Indonesian features, her flat nose, her lopsided breasts, her thick Asian hair, and how for her to continue to hate her features in that way was to spit in the face of the ghosts of mothers she'll never know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so
and then
cool.
after that, I went on a trip to Europe and I was in Norway surrounded by beautiful Scandinavian women. And I had this thought cross my mind of, are these women beautiful, or have I been conditioned my entire life to see them as beautiful? And it's probably both. I remember telling my mom when I was really young, I was watching an episode of Hannah Montana, and I said, Mama, I just want to have yellow hair like Hannah Montana does.
Really?
I didn't even have the word for blonde.
Oh.
Yeah, and it has me thinking a lot about younger little boys and little girls who don't see themselves reflected in media, who don't see themselves on TikTok.
Right.
And how does that make them feel? How does that make them move through the world?
Right. You know, you say that, it's so interesting. I wish I was taller.
Yeah.
I wish I was taller, not gonna lie. But I've been told that, you know, when I was watching movies as well, I don't get to see a lot of Southeast Asian representations too, which is really sad. But now with like Shang-Chi and everything coming out, there is more. I mean, it's Asian representation, but I feel like, you know, Asian, it's under the umbrella, right?
And do you often get misidentified? Do people not
People
guess
think I'm
Indonesian?
Filipino.
I get that too.
Yeah, we just have that face.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or like, it's like big eyes, you know, what you call brown skin, I guess. I don't know. People always mistake me for Filipino. I don't know why.
I take it as such a compliment, and I want to start learning Tagalog.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
And also Bahasa, because isn't there one tense? There's no future and past.
It's such an easy language too. Yeah.
So what am I doing? Why don't I speak Bahasa yet?
I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. You can definitely pick it up. I think it's actually a really easy language to learn compared to most languages, because you're right. It's only one tense. It's like spoken in like the third person, I think. Mm-hmm. So it's just super easy to understand. Like there's no grammar structure.
Yeah.
Learning it will be a piece of cake, but just like perfecting the accent, that will be difficult.
Yeah.
That would.
What do I remember? Marikita pulang.
Marikita pulang. That means you go home.
Yeah, it means I want to go home, because that's what I remember from my childhood saying to my dad.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
That's a. I wish my parents honestly taught me more Bahasa. Genuinely, I really wish they did. Well, technically now there's no excuse, because technically now I have to do it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Never too late.
Never too late. Let's talk about you mentioned before about what you call internal golden age things. Tell me about that.
Oh, okay. We were having a conversation yesterday.
Yes.
And it was about how I simultaneously feel 5 years old and also 80.
Tell me about that.
I think that sometimes I have a hard time relating to people our age, and it's because I feel really connected to my inner child, and I feel really connected to the 5-year-old Abril that liked getting her playing pretend and becoming best friends with someone after having just met them.
Yeah.
That's a very kindergarten thing now.
It is a very kindergarten thing.
Yeah.
I wish that people did that more.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I also feel really connected to 80-year-old Abril, which has not yet graced this world, but she will, hopefully.
She will. No,
and
I bet she will.
Yeah, and I really like writing postcards. I really like connecting with wisdom women, and sometimes I think I don't mean to sound like, oh, I don't connect with my generation. Yeah. I would much rather see the bank teller than go online and figure that out.
Why is that the case? Why do you think that's
I'd rather talk to a person than go on an online interface, and which is the least efficient way of going about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm saying talking to a human is less efficient now than just going online.
Yes, I agree. Wait, so then, yeah, I feel like, I definitely can agree with you, because I feel like for me, I don't like texting. I don't like texting.
Okay.
I don't like texting.
Why don't you like texting?
Why do I not like texting? It's just so much of a hassle. Maybe I'm just lazy that way, but I like speaking to someone. I like seeing someone face to face. So I definitely can relate to you in the sense that I would rather call someone.
Yes. Okay, why aren't we calling each other out of the blue?
Why not?
Pradika, today is the day.
Today is the day. No, but to be honest, I do it to all my friends. Whenever I ask them, it's like a small thing, I'll just give them a video call.
Yeah.
Pretty much it, yeah.
Today's the day to start calling your friends.
Do you think that what you call social media has aided us in communicating or not? What do you think?
I think we'd be okay without social media.
You think you'd be okay?
Yeah. I think in terms of creative projects like podcasts and music videos and short films, it's helpful for us to promote our brand. Yep. But then it gets to a point where you think, is what I'm putting out my personality or my brand now? Okay. With our own personal accounts. Right. And maybe this is the cynic in me. But I think we'd be okay.
I think you'd be okay.
I think we'd be okay without social media.
I think so too. Keep
WhatsApp.
keep WhatsApp. Yeah, keep WhatsApp, keep Messenger. But like, I feel like there's so much rawness that you can get from speaking to someone. Like one of my pet peeve really is like when you go to, the reason why sometimes I don't go to parties so much, or is like, well, let me put it this way. When you text someone, you can definitely misunderstand what they're saying as compared to, let's say, you speaking to someone in person.
Yeah.
But even if you speak in person, sometimes people just prefer to talk on their phones or text message. So when you talk to them, they feel so disconnected, which is really I noticed that personally when I go to parties, for example. Right, it's always the same conversation, the same thing here and there. Nothing really deep, nothing really, like right now we're taking the time to really get to know each other, right? Where we're coming from, where we're at. But sometimes people don't really talk about those kind of things. I don't know why.
And another dimension that I can't stop talking about this, so
Sure.
I apologize to any of my friends who are listening and thinking, oh my gosh, my bro won't shut up about this. But my friend Ruby was talking to me about something she learned in a sociology class recently about relationship development.
Okay.
And it is the principle of lesser interest.
Okay.
And it is that the person in the relationship, whether that's romantic or platonic, who is more disinterested, that person has more power. So it's the difference between hit me up if you want to hang out and, hey, I really want to see you. Let's make something happen.
Why is that the case?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't have the answer.
Do you find that you do that too as well?
Sometimes. I'm human. But I was thinking about it the other day, and nothing in this life is guaranteed, right? And if something were to happen to me or any of my friends, I would much rather them know how much I care about them and how deeply I care about them than for them to be unsure about it.
That's true. Yeah, you're just keeping it straight and simple, straightforward to the point. This is how I feel. Bam. But people tend to like to shroud in that mystery, Because
we fear rejection. We like a little bit of mystery.
Yeah. Why do we fear rejection so much? You think that nowadays people are often... Because I find that, like, even growing up, I find that I'm more scared of rejection than confronting my fears. Do you know what I mean?
I think we just have a tendency to make things higher stakes than they actually are.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, when you think about, let's say you want to ask somebody out on a date.
Sure.
The worst they can say is no. In our heads, we build it up to be, if they say no, they don't like me. If they say no, they'll tell all their friends. When most of the time, the answer, it's not that complicated.
It is not, no. Yeah, no, you're right. It's not that complicated. Now, here's what you call one more question for you. Season 1 is completed, now entering season 2.
Yeah.
Can you please talk to me a little bit more about the future and what's looking like for Love in Public podcast?
Gladly.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Season 1 was much more academic, centered around different students and faculty at UBC. And season 2 is taking a more creative direction. We are... revolving around the theme show and tell.
Okay, that's dope.
Yeah, and you told me you did show and tell in kindergarten. What did you bring in?
I brought in, what did I bring in? Oh, I brought in Lego.
Amazing.
I was a big Lego fan growing up. I loved Lego Star Wars. That shit was my jam.
I can see that for you.
Yeah, and I just loved like playing the little minifigures. I actually got into storytelling from the stop animations that they do on YouTube. You've seen those?
Yeah.
Before? Yeah, so that's what I was really into. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great... Listen, you could reconnect with your inner child if you wanted to by getting some Legos and then making one of those stop motions. How much joy would that bring you?
A lot of joy, to be honest.
And also you'd probably lose yourself in it. You'd get in the flow state.
Probably. This right here is sort of like, I guess adult version me, like translating all of that to now.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just... what does play look like when we're adults?
Yeah.
What things can we do that we lose track of time? Maybe it's not picking up rocks at the beach that we think are cool. Maybe it's sitting with someone and having a good conversation or learning more about, radio or animation or cameras, whatever it is that you're into. And in response to your question, season 2.
Yes.
Show and tell. We're having different creatives from very different walks of life come on the show, whether they're poets, essayists, performers, filmmakers, and we feature some of their work on the show or on our social media channels. And then we have them bring in something, a show and tell object, a person, a fact, a lyric, a photograph, a song, anything that speaks to them and their creative process and has shaped and molded the artists that they are.
Okay, that's so cool. But why particularly show and tell? Like, why is that the revolving theme? Did something hit you, like, when you were, like, coming up with the idea for season 2?
Ooh, well, I've always loved the idea of show and tell. I once hosted a party, and the theme was my favorite things, where everyone had to bring
their favorite
one of their favorite things.
Okay.
Yeah, and then at the end of the party, we did a randomized exchange, so everyone went home with somebody else's favorite thing.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah, and it's a great way of getting to know somebody because I could bring in this mug, right? And maybe there's a story behind it that you never know just looking at it. Maybe it tells you something about my grandmother or my favorite color or I was walking down the street and it's from my favorite shop on West Broadway, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I think that'll be a way better way of getting to know someone by just showing and telling. Yeah, for sure. Like this is something very sentimental to me, and this is about myself. And you get like a quick get to know.
And coming back to what you said earlier about respect and humility and how you are who you are because of the people that came before you, I think show and tell is a really great way of. It's a love letter of sorts because this is you citing. Here are the movements and the creative minds that have stirred something in me and that have inspired me to create.
Oh, yeah, no, you said it lovely. Well, thank you so much for being on the pod, Abril.
Thank
you. Really do appreciate it. Please plug in your stuff. Look at this camera, look at that camera, look at whatever camera. Plug in your stuff on your merch. Tell them where you can find the Love in Public podcast and anything that goes with it. Shoot.
Yeah, I brought a piece of merch. This is our Love in Public Cinematic Ways tote. And you can find more information on all things Love in Public at Love in Public Pod on Instagram.
Hey, let's go. Thank you so much for coming. I honestly greatly appreciate it. And, I'm excited to have more conversations with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Bye. Have a good one.